I was thinking back to when I first became aware of VR as possible reality. I thought back to the lead up to Y2K. I remember all these retrospectives, looking back at the most influential people, music, movies of the past decades, centuries, and millennium. And I remember there's this consensus around the most important invention of the past 1,000 years. It seemed like the consensus was that it was the Gutenberg printing press, which was invented in 1439. And so with the invention of the printing press, for the first time, we could mass produce the written word, spreading new ideas, perspectives, increasing literacy. And so you could easily communicate an idea from one person's mind to another person. For the first time, the common person could build a world transmitted through a mass-produced book, a new technology. And it wasn't until I had a conversation recently with a colleague working in VR, her name is Lauren Ruffin, that I equated reading with virtual reality. Lauren is the co-founder of a company called Crux. They develop virtual reality content that is made by Black artists, and their values are rooted in liberation movements and sustainability. I think they have a unique opportunity to carve out a niche for themselves in the VR market. And so it was during this conversation with Lauren that she told me that when she puts on a virtual reality headset, she experiences the kind of world building that she only gets from when she opens up a book. Now, how provocative is that? I mean, I had never thought of it that way. But it makes sense, and it makes sense for some reasons that I'll get to in a little bit. But what it also made me think about was the first time that I saw someone reading from an iPad. It was on the subway here in New York, and I remember just thinking it looked so silly, like a jumbo iPhone. And I thought, like, what are they gonna do next? Like, make a call with it? Mm-hmm. Like, I just didn't see the purpose for it, and I didn't think it was gonna catch on. I was wrong. People who buy iPads love them, and they pay to upgrade them. They will buy apps specifically designed for them. And it's the same in VR. Tablets are a different thing for a different purpose. VR is a different thing that serves a different purpose. It's not for everyone all the time. I mean, multitasking is important, and we've got to be staring at several screens at once in order to just like get through the day. And frankly, most people wouldn't have the patience to wear a VR headset for too long, and the battery life on the headsets wouldn't support it anyway. But what will happen is that people will be very intentional about when they put on their virtual reality headset, in the same way that they're intentional about when they open a book. I can tell you that I do love to read, but how often do I do it? It ebbs and flows. But when I do decide to open a book, make the time for it, I am in a state of joy and relaxation. And I cannot say the same for every time I'm on my laptop. So when you put on the VR headset and you're in this different kind of mood, you may only go in there for 20 minutes, but in that 20-minute period of time, you will experience a kind of world building that you just don't get from any other digital media. Because you can listen to a podcast while driving, you can be watching TV while on your laptop and texting, but when you're reading, you have to give it your full attention. You can't be doing much else. And it's the same in virtual reality. When you are in the headset, everything is the content. Everything you're looking at is the content or the ad or the app until you blink. And so folks who are wearing a VR headset, they are a captive audience. And you can track and analyze everything. The position and duration of head movements in the space, the interactions in the environment. Some of the new headset models can even detect the gaze of the pupil, so you can more precisely see where people were looking. And why should we care? Well, the book market today is $143 billion, and the average price of a paperback is $16. It's estimated that by 2024, the virtual reality industry will reach $44 billion, and that doesn't even account for augmented reality. With that factored in, it's $117 billion. But we'll talk more about AR later. The point is that books haven't gone away, and VR won't either. On the contrary, the market is growing. Companies like Facebook, Google, Adobe, they have all invested billions to ensure that that will be the case. And the kinds of people who are buying these headsets, they are a coveted demographic. They are young, tech-savvy, early adopters who have the kind of disposable income required to spend $400 on an entry-level model. And fortunately, for those of us who are already working in media, and particularly video, we already have skill sets, experience, an intimate understanding of storytelling that gives us a leg up to be able to harness this powerful new emerging medium. And it's exciting. We, right now, are simultaneously making and breaking the rules. I remember when I first got started in virtual reality in 2014, I thought I had to block actions all around the frame. And then when I would watch people consume the content, be sitting down on the couch, and they'd be craning their neck, looking behind them, and I realized we had to change the way we were shooting. So we started to focus our actions more in like 120, 150 degree field of view. And so people would still be able to look left, right, up, down, a comfortable range of motion, and still be in it. It's still effective, because the magic of VR is not that you can look all around. And if that was the case, then watching a 360 video on your phone or your laptop would be just as compelling as it is to watch on a headset. No, the magic of VR is in the immersion. It's the fact that when you wear a headset, you have no peripheral distractions. And this tricks your brain so that things that look far away or close in real life then look far away or close in virtual reality. And the height of your camera is like an eye line that creates a sense of proportion and depth that makes elements in your frame look and feel real. Remember The Great Train Robbery, the early short film from 1903? It was shot in New Jersey, but a Western. And it was like the first to use cross-cutting and composite editing and camera movement. These techniques really added to the realness of that short film. And when people were watching it in the theaters, when the train was coming at them on the screen, they were so in it that they jumped out of their seats. Well, we're now barely getting out of the Great Train Robbery phase in VR. And I remember the first time I put on a headset, I was so in it that I walked into a wall. And I have seen other people do the same. When people put on that headset, they teleport. And the experience is improving. There are new peripheral devices that you can attach to different parts of your body that provide haptic feedback. The headset fabrication is getting better. Software developers are designing more intuitive user interfaces. And the content creators, we're getting better too. We're learning what works and what doesn't. And so for somebody who hasn't tried on a VR headset since 2017, there's a whole new world for you to explore. And now is a good time to try it out again. I mean, just this year in May, Facebook's VR subsidiary, Oculus, released a new headset. It's called the Oculus Quest. And this headset is really special because you no longer need a cable tethering you to an expensive computer, which would have to, in the past, have been a Windows computer. You no longer need sensors placed around the room. And with this headset, you can still walk in a virtual room. You can paint a virtual painting. You could play games like Beat Saber. The headset itself detects its own position in the space. And it was just announced at the Oculus conference in September that early next year, they're going to release a firmware upgrade that will allow this headset to detect individual digits, your fingers, so that new apps developed or upgrades to existing apps can make it so you don't even need to use controllers. You can just use your hands in a virtual environment. It's estimated that between May and the end of this year, they're going to sell 1.3 million Oculus Quest headsets, just that one model alone. That's over $500 million spent on this one piece of hardware. And that doesn't even account for the productivity apps, the games, subscriptions, 360 videos, ads, in-app purchases, money that will be spent on all that. The market is growing. So how do you get in? Well, there is a low barrier to entry. 360 video cameras are cheap compared to 2D cinema cameras. We can now introduce motion into our shots much more easily and with higher quality using drones and rovers and cable cams. The post-processing is actually very similar to 2D video. You can use a lot of the same tools and workflows. And distributing your content is now much easier than it was before. With the release of the Oculus Media Studio in the past few months, now anyone can create a channel that will appear within the Oculus headsets. When you upload a 360 video to Facebook or YouTube, it simultaneously deploys for viewing on phones, laptops, and in the headset. As a matter of fact, the Oculus Videos app, which is like the prime real estate for discovering 360 videos in an Oculus, pulls a lot of its content from Facebook 360 uploads. And the Firefox app in the headsets, which was designed from the ground up for virtual reality, pulls its 360 video content from YouTube 360 uploads. And the people who are curating this content are very accessible and are craving quality content. It's easy to create 360 ads using tools like Omnivert. You can create and deploy using a visual interface that's pretty intuitive. You could use tools like Liquid Cinema VR to create interactive VR experiences without using any code. You can do good work in 360 with a crew of 4 people. And the footage that you get, this 360 footage, can be reframed, cropped, and converted for use as a 2D video. So you're getting more bang for your buck. And there are other economies of scale as well. A 360 production can piggyback off of a 2D production, and vice versa, which means you only have to plan and pay for one production, and you get more than one deliverable. And why not? I mean, we might as well engage with our audience in as many media touch points as possible. And as you invest in the development of these skills, this talent, this institutionalized in-house knowledge, you can then parlay those intellectual assets into the development of other kinds of content down the road. 3D scanning using photogrammetry, the kinds of products that require development in a game engine like Unity, augmented reality experiences. There's a lot of overlap between all of this and virtual reality. The foundational building blocks are largely the same. So right now, there's still a lack of quality content in VR. But what that means is that there's also an opportunity to make the quality content. There's an opportunity to stand out and to do something different. There's an opportunity to establish your brand in the space and to make the market. Thank you. Nokia released a very high-end 360 camera in 2016 that cost $60,000. And then not even a year later, Insta360, a company from China, released a camera that could do the same thing for $3,500. So I think that the manufacturers are still trying to figure out like their business models, and maybe it's not worth it for them to be at NAB. But as more consumers are interested in creating or consuming the content, and then they realize that they can easily create the content as well with cameras that start at $400, I think that you're going to have more people who don't see the technology as a barrier, and they're going to maybe be artists who have like the storytelling chops to take what's already being done and level up on that. And so it's like a synergistic relationship. As the cameras get cheaper and easier to use and accessible to everyone, the content's going to get better. There's going to be more incentive for people to view the content. And I think that it certainly is true that there was a lot of hype in like 2016 and 2017, which has died down now. But I think it's part of that ebbing and flowing, and that's going to come back. Yeah, and I'd just like to add one other thing, which is that I went down to Florida recently to visit my family, my grandparents getting up there, and I just captured a dinner with them with my VR camera because it's the highest resolution form of memory preservation available to me. And I've put on the headset to see what that looks like, and it feels like I'm sitting at the dinner table with my grandpa. And so I do think that as people start to figure that out, and consumers then use 360 cameras for like home movies, they're then going to want to get headsets to experience that content. And then once they get the headsets, they're going to discover what else is out there that's being professionally produced by storytellers who have editing software. The headsets now allow you to set a guardian, so you can indicate with your controller like the play area. And then if you approach that, you see a grid, a virtual grid come up so that you know you're about to exit that play area, which the first one that I wore when I walked into the wall didn't have that. So, I mean, that's pretty helpful. And with regards to vertigo, that is a real problem. And I suspect for some people, that will always be a problem. But I do think that that's something that like the headset manufacturers are like really trying to improve. And so even things like just higher frame rates, 90 frames per second, like that helps a lot versus like 60 frames per second. And the refresh rates and things like that. And then for filmmakers, really taking that into account when we're on location. Also, the cameras they have a lot better like built-in stabilization than they used to, which I think helps out a lot with that when it's a 360 video. AR will be bigger than VR, but it will open up people to trying VR. My hope is that Apple or some other big company is going to come out with a headset where you press a button and it goes from AR to VR. And that's what I want. Because I think AR, I mean, I would love to be able to like do my task management and calendaring like in my office with an AR glasses overlay and be able to like, you know, kick a task away and like use my whole body. And then when I want to learn something about the solar system, just press the button and have the VR experience. I have a maybe embarrassing example. You all remember the Fire Festival? You know, the 2D propaganda shoot? So I did the 360 component for that, which never saw the light of day, I guess for better or worse. But I was with them. Actually, the production of that propaganda was very professional because the people who were running the event were not the people who were producing the promo. But we had the same shoot schedule and the same talent, and we would just schedule in, all right, 2D's going to do their thing, and then I'm going to go in for, you know, a third of the time and do my thing. And, you know, it worked. I mean, I think the use cases for training are fantastic because when you have this sort of full sense of presence, I mean, you can have false memories. I almost feel like I've been to some of these places that I haven't. And what I would love to see happening and what I would encourage you all to do when, you know, going about your business is if there are ever opportunities to create educational experiences for kids, I would love to see more of that. I mean, I remember in high school chemistry, it took me a long time to understand the difference between a covalent and an ionic bond because the textbooks, it just doesn't really make sense on paper. But if I could have worn a VR headset, I would have just like gotten it right away. And the fact that like we don't have a VR headset in every classroom in America doesn't make any sense to me. Like we would just be able to teach so much more efficiently. Yeah, I mean for live events, for sporting events, concerts, it's great. And it's there's the Oculus Venues app, which I was watching yesterday just a few minutes of the Jazz Warriors basketball game from center court, which is like a seat I probably wouldn't normally get, live. And it felt like I was there. And the players feel like the same proportions as if you were there. Being at a rally is great. And it's not that complicated to live stream VR. And actually, some of the consumer-grade cameras, you can just tether it to your phone and use the data network from your phone, and then you're live with VR.